Hello, everybody. Welcome to this episode of the Disc Golf Answerman. I'm Bobby Cool, Daddy Slick Breeze, and this is a disc golf interview episode with Anthony Bodanza, otherwise known as Bodanza Disc Golf. We get into a really great conversation about how he got started in YouTube, how he got started doing disc golf content, what are his goals for disc golf content, and what are his goals for the professional side, the competitive side of disc golf. So let's jump right into it. All right, Anthony, how are you doing today?
Pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. I appreciate you. Offline, right before we started talking, you were telling me how busy your life is going. So I appreciate you taking the time to be able to hop on the show and allow me to get to know you a little bit better and allow our audience to get to know you even more. So I know they're all familiar with you. When I told people I was interviewing you for the show, everyone was like, "Oh, awesome! I can't wait to learn more about him. I love his stuff." So I'm
Nice.
sure everybody knows about you, and I love watching your journey and what's going on. So I did a little bit of research on you as far as your disc golf. You've got 2 disc golf YouTube channels, and then you've got another YouTube channel where it's just Anthony Bodanza. Where it's been a few years since you've done things on there. So tell me a little bit, when you first started creating videos, what pulled you into, what pulled you into actually creating videos and getting on YouTube in the first place?
Yeah, I think honestly, it's kind of one of those things where the passion followed like a different motivation. So like
Yeah.
I was like seeing YouTubers when I was in middle school and high school. I'm 27 now, so this is like mid-teens, like 20 teens, and I was like, oh, that's a sweet lifestyle. Like it was so much less of like, oh, I want to make videos. Like I didn't grow up with a camcorder in hand. I was always somewhat creative and more so like business minded than creative always growing up. My dad owns his own stuff, and so I was like, that's a cool lifestyle. I want to live like that. And so I started trying to make videos. And I think I had, even before the ones you talked about, 3, 4, 5 channels that I just started and stopped and kind of failed. And I've been doing stuff ever since like late middle school. And then eventually when I realized, hey, I want to like make videos specifically more about like personal finance stuff and like
Hmm.
business, which is what the Anthony Bodanza channel was. And maybe eventually will return to, who knows. Then I started wanting to get better at making videos. So it was much more like, I want to do this for an external motivation, which is like living life kind of on my own terms, not having to like having a low overhead. There's a lot of businesses that I was like, oh, I'd like to work for myself, but there's so many things that had a lot of overhead or a lot of like knowledge that was pre-required. So something like YouTube, you could just kind of get started and figure it out along the way. And as I got better at making videos and saw a little bit of success, it's one of those things where I really truly believe like follow your passion. I think sometimes the passion comes after you try something, because the better you get at something, the more passionate you get. Like the better I got at disc golf, the more passionate I got, the better I got at making videos, the more passionate I got about it. So that's kind of where it came from. It was wanting to live the YouTuber lifestyle, which at the highest level is not something that I think I'll still ever attain, but it's allowed for a lot of freedom in what I do.
I think that's interesting you bring that up, because when I've talked to some young people before, and I jokingly say, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And they're like in their either teenage years or in their 20s, and they say, a couple of them have said, "I don't know, maybe be a YouTuber." So it's interesting to see that that's something that someone can decide to do, that be a plumber, be a doctor, be a journeyman, be whatever, and a YouTuber is part of that option to go through. That's pretty cool. What are you looking for creatively when you started creating videos? What sort of creative direction did you want to take?
It's kind of hard to answer because I don't really think I thought about it in terms of like how do I want to creatively express myself before, because I never did anything high level, but I did like music. So I've like played guitar for a while and like played piano for a while. So like, and I like to sing, and so I would do like music things to more be creatively expressive. And it's kind of funny that you even asked that question, because I hadn't really noticed it until right now. But the more videos I make, the less I've like done musically. It helps that I haven't had a piano when I lived in a van, and we haven't bought one, and when we move we're planning to, but I've just like I pick up my guitar less than I did before, because I just feel like I'm getting more creatively fulfilled. But long story, long way to say that I think what I always thought about creatively was the authenticity. I never wanted to like try to have to act or perform. I always wanted to just like hope that I was charismatic enough, or people liked me enough, or I was making stuff that was valuable enough, with doing it completely authentically. And so I think that's why I had like so many things. I never really tried to chase viral stuff. I would always, I guess one thing on my other channel, I did like when the stimulus checks were out, I would like read the legislation about it and be like, this is what you could expect. Cause there were so many views that were happening through that. But I was always kind of more creating content, of the things that I did. And so I guess now what I could say, that is something that I've thought about for a few years is I want to like create a business, which YouTube to me is a business. I run it like one, but I want to create a business that like serves my lifestyle rather than kind of the opposite way around. Like I don't want, or a business that allows me to live my lifestyle. So instead of trying to just like make money, however, and then have a life on the side, I kind of intermingle them both a lot more than I think most people do. And most people would maybe even want to, because I would like to work 50, 60, 70 hours or so because most of the things that I'm doing are things that I would want to be doing. And I understand that like in order to do them as much as I want to, play disc golf as much as I want to, throw as many new discs as I want to, go and like travel as much as I want to, there's gonna like it's not gonna be as like pure of any of those things as it could be if I just like had a bunch of money and was able to do them. But the only way that I'm able to do them is by creating content around it. So I'm trying to create content that fuels my lifestyle, if that makes sense. And that's kind of where creatively I land now.
Yeah, I think maybe this is what I'm hearing is that you don't want to just have a job so that you can go do things you like doing. You want to do the things you like doing and then get paid to do them.
Yeah. And I think in some ways, and to some people have said this to me, but it kind of like adulterates it in a little bit. Like a little
Yeah.
bit. It's like disc golf to me isn't like this pure thing that I do for fun. Trying to like play as a high level is not like this pure thing that I'm just trying to train to do that. It's all kind of revolves around each other, creating content, trying to go pro, trying to review a bunch of discs. And so none of it's like as pure as it could be, I guess.
Yeah.
But I think it's the only way that I see for it to be possible for me. And I'm such like a scatterbrained person who needs to be doing so much that it's the only way that I could see myself doing. If I could only train for disc golf, I think I'd go crazy because I need to be doing more than just that. So I'd
Yeah.
find something else to do anyways. So might as well just put it all together into one amalgamation. Or
And when you say
abomination might be a better word.
yeah, when you say it's not the purity is kind of not the same, what do you mean by that?
I guess like if someone like disc golf to me isn't just a hobby. Like there are a lot of things about
Yeah.
disc golf that I love, but there's some things that like I don't love about what I do. But that's like every job. Like every job you don't love it. So like it in some ways I think it's more if you let it. Like it can like
Mm.
really detract from disc golf if you let it. And I think I did for a lot of this year. This year was like a really hard year for me, both personally and business wise. And because I commingle them, it feels like one and the same to me. And so all like fit together. But I feel like disc golf to me hasn't been since I started my channel, and I don't know if it ever will be just this fun hobby that I go and do. If I'm thinking about disc golf, I'm thinking about content in the business of disc golf. But to me, that's enjoyable and what I like. So in some senses, like I guess I'm trying to think from a third party perspective. It's like less pure. I'm not just like I never just like go and throw to have fun, or I do it very very rarely. There's always like something else that's going on as well, which is kind of the only way that's allowed me to kind of do the things that I've done in disc golf. At least I think, and there might be another way to have done it, but that's the best path that I saw that I took.
Yeah, I remember early on in my disc golf career, as far as working for Dynamic Discs, people would say, "Man, you got a dream job. You're around disc golf all the time. You probably get to play all the time." You're like, "Yeah, I could," but there's days where I get off work and I'm like, "I don't want to talk disc golf. I don't want to do disc golf. I've been doing disc golf all day,"
Yeah,
and it took. There were some times where I had to kind of regain the love I had for the sport to actually go out and throw. And even then, when I go out and play with my buddy, I have a buddy that we sometimes go out on Sunday and we just play. Even in my mind, I'm thinking, man, should I have a camera behind me just in case I get an ace or just in case I get a great throw with the new trees in or whatever? So I kind of get that where it's kind of always on your mind, the two mixing together of this is a job. Also, this is something I enjoy doing.
yeah.
So on that, as far as you say, you're sharing your journey, you are documenting your growth in real time as you try to
hmm
as you move into professional disc golfer, and I believe you did some series or did some videos on trying to attain a certain rating and things like that. How did you get comfortable showing all the parts of your journey?
I don't think. I think I was gonna say I don't think I ever felt uncomfortable with it, but I think that would not be 100% true. I think the cost benefit of it was always super positive to me. Like the cost of sharing it was always going to be there, but it was so much less than the potential benefit because I saw it more as like a competitive advantage of like, okay, I'm gonna be able to share everything that I'm doing, my whole journey. Some of it's gonna resonate, some of it's not. There's been a lot of like things that I've shared because I've committed to sharing so much of it. That's been embarrassing. Like this year, I think my rating went down like 14 points, and like I'm pretty okay with it. I'm like 978 rated, and it's the lowest I've been rated I think in like 2+ years, and like I'm okay with it because I understand what it is, but I also know that like a potential cost of sharing stuff is like someone could just look at that and be like, oh, he fell off, and it's like, yeah,
Mhm.
kind of. In disc golf, I definitely did, and like I know I have an idea of where I can go from here, but I think that cost always was outweighed by the benefit of sharing, of not like hiding stuff behind a paywall or not even a paywall, but just like an emotional wall of like not being willing to share everything. And sometimes that veered into sharing too much. And so I'm figuring out what that balance looks like as I continue to evolve and get better as a creator, and just personally. But to me, it was the comfort wasn't fully there, but I always knew it was worth it because there wasn't anybody who was sharing that. Like when I came into like creating disc golf content, there wasn't like the MA1 trying to go MPO person who was making content and so I was like, okay, well, this is like a niche that I can fill. And I saw that niche being there, and it's a very aspirational thing. I think it's easier to aspire to be a high level MA1 or a local pro than it is to be on the pro tour. And so to kind of share that whole journey in the hope that, and a part of it too, I guess, was also the hope that one day maybe something does happen. Maybe I do get a tour card eventually, or I do cash on a full Elite Series event, and then I have all the way back from my earliest videos. People are like, "Oh my gosh, like this is crazy." I still get comments all the time, it's like, "Oh my gosh, your form has changed so much," because someone clicks on a video that's from 2.5 years ago or 1.5 years ago, and it's like, yeah, I know, it's kind of crazy. And I'm hoping that someone can say that about the videos that I'm making now, not only about my form, but about how I approach disc golf and just continuing to get better and pursuing that. And I always knew that I guess I just thought that authenticity and being vulnerable with those things would have a better return um, for not only myself but also people watching, because it's more real and honest than just trying to hide it and like pretend like I'm something that I'm not. And I also am not that good of an actor, so I couldn't really pretend that like I was something I wasn't. And I figured if I'm going to turn a camera on so much, I'm going to share it all. So
Yeah, no, I love the authenticity and the transparency. It's something that we've always tried to do at Dynamic Disc when I was here, and now that I'm back here, and especially it's relevant nowadays with the advent of AI, where we're getting fed just super polished looking videos, even though you can tell they're AI, but they're just going to get better. But I believe people are going to crave the more authentic stuff as we continue to get the AI slop. And that's not to say that AI is not going to be part of what we do, but the slop we're getting, people are going to get tired of it. So I think I said kudos to you
mm,
for showing the transparency, and I think that is something that like you want to share your journey because you want people to relate, but then also you kind of open yourself up for scrutiny. So I say keep doing it. So I enjoy it myself. But okay, so let's kind of talk real quick more about content creation.
mhm.
When you plan your videos, not necessarily the disc reviews, but some of the other type videos, what usually sparks an idea? Is there like a moment on the course,
Mm.
or you just see something and you think, "Oh, this is a great idea," and then how do you what qualifies it as okay? I'm going to invest time into making this an actual video.
That's a good question. That's something that I've, especially over the last couple months, been investing a lot more time and even money into like YouTube based coaching from creators in other spaces that are not disc golf that is helping to like change how I view these things. I think the ideas, the way that I would have decided before is not what I'm going to say now, because I think the way that I would have decided before has not always been the best, and it's caused a decent amount of stagnation for the last year and a half. But I think this even ties into the vulnerability and like the authenticity. I think that it's super important to know exactly who I'm making a video for. It's actually the reason why you said like not your disc reviews and your other stuff, but your other stuff. And I'm actually in the new year. I know this podcast is coming out pretty soon, so I won't fully divulge anything. But in the new year, there's a change that I'm already like starting to implement that I'll like finalize and announce. That will be, I think, pretty beneficial to my channels, as you said, and also to my audiences. There's not going to be a little less confusion, because I think what it would be for the longest time was I would just make the videos that like I have an idea and I'm interested in. I make the video that I wanted to make. And a part of that is because I would make the video that I want to see. But the more that I'm realizing is like, I'm not my audience. Like, and I think that's probably to their benefit that they're not all like me, but I'm not my audience. So I shouldn't be making only the videos that I want to make. Cause there's some things that I think I get like super deep and niche on and I'm super nerdy about. And so I'll be like, oh, let's make this. And it's just like, no one cares. And so I think having the filter of like, who is not only like the type of person, and like disc golfer is not a person that you're making a video for, because if you even think about the people that you'd see at your local pitch and putt over the course of a day or a week, it's so varied what a disc golfer is. So if you try to make a video for a disc golfer, you're actually going to catch nobody. And I feel like that's what I was trying to do for a while. I was trying to make videos for myself. And so now if I have an idea, I have no shortage of ideation. That's kind of easier for me. What's more important for me is figuring out how that idea serves someone that I want to make the video for. So who is my audience? And my audience on Bodanza Disc Golf is someone who's like disc curious. So I would used to make like whatever I wanted to do, which I'm kind of a disc nerd. So like I love reviewing discs. I love talking about like the shoulder of the disc is different than the dome and how the wing and the height and how all that affects stuff. And most people don't care. So I'd like people would click through and just watch you throw the disc and have fun with your buddies. And what I realized is like that's a lot of disc golf and the majority of disc golf. And it's two different people, like someone who's really nerdy about discs and someone who just like maybe doesn't even play disc golf, but is curious about it. They like sports. They like seeing cool things done and they like banter from friends. And so like the person who's that person, it's a different video that I would make even about the same thing. So for instance, like I just put out a video, I'm going to be putting out a video today after I'm done with this, with the Luna Battle Packs. And, I was thinking, okay, like we got to talk about the rings and all this stuff. And I realized the person I'm making this video for just wants to see me go and battle a buddy who's really obsessed with Lunas. And so you can come out on top and there's a ton of banter. And so I didn't focus on like, these are the flight numbers and this is what the rings do. And it's like, they're two different discs. So we talk about the fact that they're different discs, but we don't need to get into the weeds of like, okay, what's the science behind why this could be different? Because the vast majority of the audience that I'm going for there doesn't care. And so I think figuring out exactly who the person that I'm making the video for is, and then running every single piece of packaging for the video, so the title and thumbnail, so that it relates to something that they would be interested in, and then delivering on the promise of the title and thumbnail, and then also continuing to keep them entertained and engaged with what they want to see is how I kind of run through kind of my ideation filters. So I have a lot of ideas all the time, and more recently I've been throwing out more and more ideas because I'm like, I care about this, but like I don't know how to put this in a way that other people would care, so I'm not going to make it. And I think it's good to start out by making stuff that you're interested in because you need a lot of reps. You need to figure out exactly what you need to make. But if you can kind of point those reps in a direction that's a little more succinct and a little more clear, I think you'd likely do better if you know exactly like, okay, this is the idea that I have. It came up to me, however. And if you need to find ideas, there's plenty of ways to find ideas, but it's easier to find ideas if you know exactly who you're making videos for, because then you go and look at stuff that they're interested in, and then you make videos that they would be interested in. And so if you're creating content, I think figuring out exactly who you're making it for, and then making sure that every part of their experience with your brand on whatever channel it is, whether it's Instagram, TikTok, or YouTube, is something that they're interested in. So the title and thumbnail match something that they're intrigued by, and then you deliver on that in the content, and the content itself doesn't like bore them because you're talking about something that you're interested in, which is something that I do all the time as someone who like likes to be authentic and talk a lot. And I realize like authenticity and vulnerability, going back to that conversation, is not sharing everything. It's sharing the things that make sense for the audience to care about. And that doesn't mean that like, because inherently, like, I'm only showing my disc golf self. Like, I don't share a lot about my family, not because I don't care, or like, not because it's not important, but because like the people who are watching my disc golf videos, they might care because they care about me, but they care about me playing disc golf, and my family doesn't play disc golf with me. So like, that's not an important part of that. There might be stories where that does happen, but you don't need to share all of yourself to be authentic. It's just, I think, more about not hiding the things that do relate to the audience that you're trying to capture, and figuring out first who that audience is, and that's kind of the framework that I'm leading myself down, and still have a long way to go. Because I do think, I've been thinking about this a lot recently. I think disc golf content creation, myself included, is pretty easy to get stagnant because you're just making content for disc golf, and that's just too broad. And in some ways it's too broad, and in some ways it's too niche, because if you're making stuff for disc golf, you're going to speak the language too much. Like, you're going to talk about flight numbers and hyzer and anhyzer. And like, if my wife watches those videos with me, I've been having her watch my videos with me and like critiquing my intros and outros and like some key points to be like, I don't care about this. Like, I don't know what this means. Like, I live with you. You've been doing disc golf full time for 3 years. Like, I don't know what this means. And so it's like, okay, well, that's not going to go in the in the video for the person who's just curious, because the person who just likes playing disc golf with their buddies at their local pitch and putt also doesn't care about flight numbers and hyzer and anhyzer in the same way. So how do you talk about it in a way that is understandable to them so that when those words do get brought up, they have a translatable like language or image to bring to it? So that's what I'm trying to figure out. And a long roundabout way to say that I think the ideas need to flow through who you're making the videos for. And ideas can come from anywhere, but if you need to find them, I think it's still best to figure out who you're making the videos for first. And if you don't even want to get to that level, just make videos that you would want to watch, because there are enough people who are like you. And I got pretty far and then stagnated at a point of making videos that I would want to watch. And so I don't think it's a bad thing, but I think where I'm at is trying to evolve to that next point where it's not about me, it's about my audience fully. And I think that if you can start there, you can go much faster and further than I have in the time that I have. So those are just my general thoughts.
Wow, you touched on a lot of things that I want to dive into.
I talk
but
a lot, man.
No, yeah. From your videos, you can tell you like to talk. So, but that's good. That's good. You need to be able to talk on video for sure. But no, something I want to touch base on to get your thoughts on is you talked about the disc golf audience, or technically the disc golf demographic, right? Where it's always been a thing, and I think Seth was on. I don't remember what podcast he was on, but he had mentioned that, you know, people don't understand that the diehard disc golfer, the guy that like knows all the flight plates, everything, the parting line, and he follows the Disc Golf Pro Tour every event, that represents a small portion of what's happening out there as far as disc golf. They don't realize that the casual guy, the guy that doesn't even the buddy I play with, he doesn't care who's playing the next Disc Golf Pro Tour. He doesn't care where the next stop is. But he has a full bag. He's got a cart, a full bag of discs. He's got dirt bags. He's got a retriever. He's got it all, right? He's buying new discs and things like that. So, but he could care less about. And that's not to disparage the Disc Golf Pro Tour. I think they're doing great things. I think that's an important component of our sport. But what are your thoughts on that as far as like the people coming off and saying we got to invest more in the Disc Golf Pro Tour, where it sounds like you're going for more the audience of like you said, disc curious. In other words, I just happened to, someone gave me a disc. I saw a basket at a local park. Maybe I'll try this disc golf thing out. It sounds like that's who you kind of want to talk to. So what would you say to the people that say that that's not the important people we need to reach out to?
I think I think both of them just have different focuses.
Yeah.
I don't think there's like a right and wrong. And I think so much of it depends on what the goal is. If the goal is to grow disc golf as a professional sport, then investing in the Pro Tour makes a lot of sense. If the goal is to grow the disc golf playing base, then the Pro Tour is much less important for that goal.
Yeah.
So I think figuring out like what the goal is, and I think it's almost always better to, especially in a smaller sport where it's easy for like there to be a lot of cohesion because everyone wants to like be buddy, which is a good thing, and like collaborate in a lot of ways. Those are all good things. But I think having disparate ideas where there are going to be people in high levels in the sport who have resources and connections and know-how who are really focused on the professional side. And there are also people who are like, they're not quite butting heads, but there's like a spirited like debate of like, no, this is important. No, this is important. Both of those things, if there's a spirited debate and like they're trying to figure it out, will grow, because a rising tide, disc golf as a whole, will lift all ships. Right. And so getting more people in the player base will get more people interested in the Pro Tour. Getting more people interested in the Pro Tour can reach out to people who are interested in professional sports and maybe get them into playing disc golf, because ultimately someone doesn't need to play disc golf to watch the Pro Tour. There are plenty of people in other sports where that's the case. And so I think they're ultimately just kind of two different avenues that people can go down. But overall, one of the thoughts I've had a lot about disc golf is I think disc golf as a whole, I'm very complicit in this. I think creators, companies, everything, I think disc golf as a whole has been so inwardly focused for a while, where there's a pie and everyone's trying to eat a little bit more of the pie and figure out how to nibble a little bit more on the pie that's already here, versus trying to take their same slice and just grow the whole pie. Because especially if the pie grows, like every little bit, it's like it's like exponential or geometric growth. I'm not that big of a math nerd to fully know that in terms of a pie chart. But if the whole pie expands, every little bit that expands, your portion of it expands more, because there's larger volume as that arc gets wider and wider and wider as the pie grows. And I think what I'm wanting to do is try to focus at least one of my channels on that kind of much wider, like, let's try to grow the pie a little bit, even if it's just, and it's the type of thing where it's like, if I do grow the pie a little bit by getting a couple more people interested in disc golf, that might not translate to the pro tour. Like, it's not going to be 1-for-1. I don't think it's going to be, I think it'll be some sort of direct correlation. Like, if 1,000 new people are interested in disc golf, maybe 10 of them are interested in the pro tour. And at that point, it's a conversion thing for the pro tour. And so that's where both of them work together, is if people are focused on growing the grassroots, then if someone gets into disc golf, then they realize, oh, there's a professional side of this. Then the pro tour's out, and people trying to grow that are trying to capture those people who now have interest to make them fans. And so it's both sides of the pendulum. People who are interested in, oh, wow, this is a professional sport, this is cool. Oh, maybe I want to actually try to play. Where can I buy the discs? And so I think it's both of them. And I think having people on different sides of the issue who are not just talking about it, but actively working towards it, but also talking about it, I think having that combination can help burgeon the growth a decent bit better. But I think focusing less on everyone who's already in disc golf and more on staying like top of funnel is how I think about it. Like, you want to say, like, I want to make most of my content top of funnel. I don't want to niche down into like, okay, this is why I throw Anheuser versus Heiser versus whatever. I can do that in the content, but I think in the packaging, which like the title and thumbnail is the marketing for people watching my videos, in my marketing pieces, I don't want to get too deep into it. I want people who might just be curious to get into it and then be like, whoa, I didn't know all this was even possible with the disc at the end of the video. Or like, oh, this is cool, but I don't care, so I'm going to leave. But maybe they're interested enough to watch something, and then it pops up again and again. So I don't know what that's going to look like, but that's what I'm going to be focusing on a lot moving forward on Bodanza Disc Golf, is trying to stay pretty top of funnel. And if people get interested or not, great, but I want to try to focus on growing the pie rather than just trying to cannibalize a little bit more of it, which I think which makes sense in a contraction. Like disc golf, there's been a contraction in the growth. I don't think there's a contraction overall, but like there's been a contraction in growth. Growth has definitely slowed, and there probably has been a little bit smaller. And so it's easier at that point to look inside, because you can put out fires and you can manage losses much easier than trying to still pursue growth. But I think where disc golf is going to grow again is by going back to pursuing growth, even when growth doesn't come easily, because growth came easily in the pandemic. Like, it was something that it just kind of grew, not because people in disc golf did anything particularly special, but because of the circumstances of the world. And that's something that we capitalized on, and that's great. But I think it's going to be harder and slower growth, but I think it's still possible to have that growth if we focus on really expanding the pie rather than just looking internal. It's not bad for companies to have competition internal of disc golf, but I think the focus has been 80-20 internal, and it needs to be 80-20 external, is kind of my thought.
So to that point, I think that was a great answer. Because yeah, it's really where your focus is. But to your point, as far as disc golf, do you think we've hit the low point? Because it is kind of like, we were growing, COVID, boom, and then we're slowly going down. And it's like, have we hit the bottom yet? In a sense that not hit the bottom where we're dead, but hit the bottom where now we can start slowly back the growth and not compare it to the pandemic.
That's hard to say. I think like the market of disc golf, the market overall, like there's just too many factors that contribute to it to say like, and I'm also like not Nostradamus. Like, these are opinions that I'm having that I'm going to like actively work towards and try to pivot quickly if I'm wrong. Because everything I said in this whole call could be wrong, and that's fine. Like, I want to try, and I'd rather be like moving, because you can move a ball much more than you can, like, if there's no inertia, you can't really move it. But if you're moving down the path, you can always swat it one way or the other. I would hope that that people can kind of reorient, and companies and disc golfers and pros can reorient their expectations. But it's kind of hard when there's still such a recency of big contracts, big money, like all this stuff happening. It's easy to look back on like, this is what things were. Let's try to get back there. But getting back there involves a black swan event, essentially. Like, it's something that is super unlikely to happen again. And so what does not getting back there, but getting there again look like? Like, instead of looking backwards and seeing what did we do that made that happen, where it probably was more external forces that created like the opportunities, how can we move forward in a way that is going to help us grow, and maybe not the same rate, but I think one of the things it's been for me is figuring out how to, as things have changed and adjusted, and I became a dad and had to like really drastically lower how much I was able to work, as I watched my daughter a lot during the week. it was really hard for me for a long time. And then I just kind of tried to reorient my expectations a little bit. I was like, well, this is what it is now. Like, I can keep trying to go back to what it was and just try to fit this new thing in. But like, this is just the reality now. And so how do we move forward? And I think it's less of, did we hit the bottom, and more of, are companies willing, or like, is disc golf as a whole, and companies and pros and like everything, are we all willing to just like be like, okay, well, this is the new baseline, instead
Mhm.
of like, we gotta get back there. Because
Yeah.
I think that that type of desperation, which I've had with like views before, and like you start to do stupider things. Like if my views are going down, you just start to be a little dumber. Where it's like, oh
Mhm.
well, what's this new trendy thing that I can do just to get back there? Because you're focused on getting
Mhm.
back there versus like, well, this is kind of where I'm at. So how do we move forward? I think it's an acceptance of where things are that will allow disc golf as a whole to move forward. Um, and I think a part of that acceptance is people who are like actively doing things in order to like help themselves and help disc golf as a whole. There's just like some noise that you need to not listen to. That's what I've realized a lot, is like a lot of like the people are like, oh, I thought he fell off, or like I thought like, or like, oh, you got so much worse. It's like, those things can be true, and like that's okay. And like it's easy to get emotional about them because you want to feel defensive, but I've always done best when I don't get defensive by those things, and just like, it's really hard for me. I'm very easy to get defensive about it, but when I don't allow myself to, and I'm just like, okay, I'm not gonna worry about that. I'm just gonna keep working and moving forward, and like this is where things are now, and let's like see how we can make it better. That's, I think, that's my prognosis of like what
Yeah.
needs to happen in disc golf. And it's kind of unfortunate because you do look back on the good old days. Like, it's like, man, I made a lot of money that month, or like, man, this year was so good for us in terms of sales. And it's like, sweet, that can be true, but you can also be where you are now, and you kind of have to accept it. Otherwise, it's really hard to move forward. If you're just trying to look backwards to get back to where you were, I feel like it's really hard to effectively move forward, because I don't think consumers, an audience, like consumers in terms of like Dynamic or other businesses, or an audience in terms of me, like they're not dumb. Like they can tell what, they can smell when you're desperate and like you're just
Mhm.
trying to get something done and like trying to get back to somewhere, versus like, okay, this is what it is. Like, let's move forward and like let's do it together. Like, I think trying to really focus on the top of funnel things, adjusting how I'm attacking my content in the new year, and I think it'll make sense to people. At least I'm hopeful. Maybe it won't, but I'm hopeful that it will, because it's something that in my mind is going to be serving them better, because I'm focused on what they need more so than like, I need to make this amount of money, so I need to figure out how to do that. This last month, I've shifted my focus. I'm glad we had this conversation this month instead of a month or two ago, because there's been so much like personal shifts and growth that I've had to happen with this move coming up. And a part of that has been, instead of like, oh man, I need to make I need to make this amount of money this month, so I'm just gonna do what I'm gonna make this many videos and just trust it because that's what worked for me before. Now it's like, how am I going to focus on making the best video possible, giving each video a little bit of time to breathe, which I would always try to post 20 to 30 times a month. And now I'm going to post 10 to 15 like this month. And I think I'm going to actually, for the first month, in about 6 months, get back to the ad revenue that I was making 6 months, 6 to 18 months ago, like that whole time period, because I finally was like, this is what it is. Let's move forward. And I think I'm trying to speak a little bit more from like things that have worked for me that hopefully translate to other people, but it's really helped me to be like, well, this is what it is. Instead of like, okay, how do I just like, what are the things that I've done that have worked? And I think that's where I felt that desperation. And I posted videos and I've been like, I hope people don't see how like desperate this feels. And then like the video doesn't do well. And I'm like, why didn't it do well? And it's like, people, audiences, consumers, they're not dumb. Like they understand what's going on and they can smell it. And like, if something is for my interest, not their interest, I don't think that's hard to find. And I think there's a mix where it's like, it's always going to be on a dimmer of like, it's not all one or all the other. There has to be like it's for them and for me. But I think when one skews so much farther towards me, and like, I need to make money from this, I need to make this happen, it's pretty palpable. I don't think, and I don't, especially over the long term. Like, if it's something that you're wanting to do over the long term, I don't think that trying to chase the money that'll be quick, that'll get you back to where you were, is the right move. I think trying to find what's a sustainable strategy for this is like, let's, instead of like your question, finally getting back to it. Jesus, I talk so much. Your question of like, do I think this is the floor? I think that it's the floor if we acknowledge that it's the floor. If we don't
Mhm.
acknowledge that it's the floor and we're still looking backwards on like, this is what it was, we got to get back there, then it might not be the
Mhm.
floor. But I think if we acknowledge like, this is where things are, and this is where I have to commend the Pro Tour. I think they've done a pretty good job of this, where it's like purses have gone down and there hasn't been like, I mean, I haven't been watching a lot of like social media or YouTube at all for the last couple months. I just have had so little time, but I haven't. It hasn't seemed to me like in their press releases and the little things that I've seen that like they've been like insanely apologetic or like anything crazy about like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like this used to be so much more and it's not that anymore. It's like, this is the purse. And like next year's like, we're going to do doubles. And it's like, they're trying to move forward and figure things out. And it's like, this is where we are. Let's move forward. Let's stop trying to look backwards. Let's look forward. And the forward, we might never get back to where we were, but we might surpass it way quicker if we acknowledge that this is the floor or this could be the floor and figure out like, how do we make it that? Like, how do we make this our foundation rather than how do we try to scramble to get to where we used to be? Those are too many thoughts.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Let's kind of switch gears a little bit. Let's talk more on the disc golf side as far as the competition side.
Mm.
What has any of those goals shifted for you as far as your play?
Yeah. Yes and no, kind of. I think
Okay.
yes compared to early this year, no compared to the long run. I think so. It's kind of interesting. So I started playing disc golf 2022 in January. So it's been almost 4 years now. And I set this goal when I started my channel in May of that year, May or June, or it was June. And I set this goal of like, I want to cash at a pro tour. So I did my first MA1 tournament. I like was vlogging that. And then I've like vlogged everything up to there. And then the Kansas City Wide Open was a silver series in like 2023 or something. Yeah, and I cashed at it, and then like I kind of like lost. I was like, okay, well that was a big goal, and even though it wasn't a true pro tour event, I wasn't doing that much more. I was still like in the van, and so I was like, well, that's fine. And so I instead of like continuing to try to push to the next goal, I was focused on like, oh, my content's doing fine, so like I'm gonna focus on this a lot, and then I did get a decent bit better, but my progress kind of stalled a bit, and then this last year. In 2024, I started like paying for a trainer and was like working on my body a lot, and that went pretty well. But then earlier this year, I like went to the Kansas City Wide Open. I was trying to do everything. I was trying to make all my videos. I was trying to train all the time. I was trying to be a great pro, and I basically like been working like the off season for me sometimes like that last off season was kind of like my on season because I was like I'm just gonna post so much and I'm still gonna train. It's the off season. And then I got to Kansas City Wide Open. This was my first big tournament of the year, and I just like was so burnt out and played so bad and like didn't care. And I really hated that I didn't care. And so ultimately, it took like a lot of the rest of this year to figure out like what do I want to happen professionally? Because a part of that was like I have a 1 month old or a 1 year old who was born August of 2024, and so that just changes your whole entire life. And I don't think I fully acknowledge like what that would mean. And so now it's changed the goals, but more so the timeline and the intensity for which they're important. Because to me, I like if I have like this big nebulous goal, it feels important to like solve it and figure it out. And so like trying to get a tour card or cash on the tour, I felt like I was so much further away from that than like some of my like creator goals. And so I would put the creator goals a little bit more to the wayside or like set them a little lower so I could focus on the tour goal. And that's like fun for my inner child who wants to be a pro athlete, but it's not one good for me professionally or my business. And it's not good because I mean, we talked about, I've wanted to be a YouTuber since I was in like middle school. So like this disc golf thing just came up. And so it was like kind of chasing the new exciting thing. And so the goals have more morphed into what I kind of believe is a more like mature version of like, I think the goal ladder is still there of like cashing at a full elite series, trying to get a tour card, maybe eventually getting into the tour championship. Like I would love to like be good enough to do that. But that used to be like super important for me that would all happen. And I would like, I feel like I was willing to give up so much to make that happen. And now I'm willing to give up very little to make that happen. Not that I'm not going to try to make it happen, but because I've set myself up in a way that I'm better positioned than most people to like really go after it. Like in the new year, my wife's going to focus more on childcare and helping me with our business together. I'm going to focus on content and I'm going to have a lot more time to focus on training, and my content can help me train because I get access to the best players in the world and coaching and like all this stuff that's like, I have incredible opportunity here, but I used to like almost be willing to give it all up because I like needed to be pro. And I think a part of that was like, I set the goal. And so it was very like, there's a lot of ego in it because it would feel very um, disappointing, but also embarrassing to not hit those goals if I couldn't because I set them pretty publicly. And what I've come to terms with over the course of this year, as like I did perform pretty poorly, and I did all right. I got like 50th at elite event in Cascade Challenge or Portland or something, or like 50th and 60th. I was playing pretty decent for those stretches, and then I played really bad at like the Creators Cup and the Des Moines Challenge or Tasmania Challenge, and it made me realize like this to me needs to be my fun hobby in disc golf. like trying to train to go pro. I want to work really hard at it because anything that I want to do, I want to work really hard at. But I need to figure out what am I willing to sacrifice for this goal. And just the answer turned out to be not a lot. To me, content creation is always going to be first. And I think for a lot of 2024 and early 2025, it was pretty far second because it was a solved science to me. I knew if I posted this much, I would make this much money and I'd be fine. Like, and so that became like, okay, now I just got to focus on training. And then it's like, well, actually, your daughter needs a lot of more energy than you thought. Um, and also like, if you're phoning in your content's going to feel like it's phoned in. So people aren't going to, so like you're going to be on a little steady decline. And so what I realized is like, for me, it's going to be content first. But I think that goal ladder of those things I talked about, first cashing out an elite event, is important. But it also means that like, for instance, next year, my focus is going to be so much more local, which I think is what everyone advised me to do anyways. But because I had the opportunity to go and play the bigger events, because I could swing it financially, because I could make videos out there and like just make it work, I would go and do those versus like next year, it's like, well, let's save some money. Let's figure out what this looks like with my wife not working full time anymore. Let's play as much locally as I can and try to get as good as I can and win a bunch of stuff, hopefully, and like see what happens. And I think always before is like, I'm going to be a pro. And now I'm like, let's see what happens. And I think
Mhm.
that for me, because I can trust my work ethic and trust like the foundation I've already laid, is a higher likelihood of success than trying to force it. Because I feel like I won't let as much go to the wayside and I will actually do the things that are either harder or more embarrassing or like require a little bit less ego to do, because now I'm not, my whole like ego isn't tied to like whether or not I'm going to be a pro. But I still think like I would like to at least have a couple of years in my career down the road where I do try to have a full tour and just again see what happens. But I think I would try to force it and be like, I'm going to get good enough on the road. And then I just have a lot of time blindness and didn't know like what it would actually take. And now it's like, let me be a little more methodical and slow. Like all I'm talking about is slow growth. And whenever I've pursued slow growth, the growth has been much faster than the slow growth that I've wanted. Like when I started my YouTube channel in disc golf, I wanted slow growth. I was like, let's just try to make some videos. I'll still make stuff on my other channel and like, we'll figure this out over time. And within 6 months, I was making full-time income. And so it's just like, I feel like pursuing slow growth unfixes my mind. I feel like I have a fixed mindset for the most part if I'm really trying to pursue a goal and I have to get it. If I'm like, this is a cool goal, let's try to make it happen, I feel like I have a growth mindset. I'm very open to all feedback and opportunities from everywhere and different ways of making it happen. If I am trying to pursue the goal, I'm very good at visualizing what it takes to get somewhere, but I'm not good at straying from that once it's become super important for me to get to that goal. And so I feel like I would listen less to like the pros that I would interact with, the coaches I'd interact with, than I could have actually gotten more benefit from if I would have been more open to what they say, because I had this idea of how I was going to make it happen. And the idea of how I'm going to make, and any time that I've had an idea of how I'm going to make something happen, it's gone worse than if I've just let it happen and tried really
Mhm.
hard. I feel like trying hard and putting a lot of effort into it is much more important than doing it on the terms that I set out to do. And so that's been the biggest shift for me since I set that goal a while ago. And when I set the initial goal of cashing at the Pro Tour event, that's where I was. I was like, I'm going to figure it out. And then I did. And I cashed at like and I was kind of confused because it's like a silver event. So it didn't really count, but I was like, okay, maybe it kind of counts. And then I was like, okay, sweet, I did it. And so I'm like, now I am good, or now I'm good enough. And like, now I can figure it out and I know what I'm doing. And it's like, no, don't change the thing that I did to get there, which was just taking in a bunch of feedback, not having an ego attached to it, and really trying hard. And instead, I'm like, okay, well, I'm fine now, so I'll just, it'll just happen. It's like that's not
Yeah.
how anything works.
Yeah, you definitely don't have you definitely have to figure out how to not attach your ego to it too much. Or another way of saying it, you've got to build a thick skin for sure, especially
Hmm.
as you're putting yourself out there. Because you know, everybody makes goals, right? We make goals in our life. Sometimes we achieve those goals, sometimes we don't. And not that many people know, right? They may not know, but when you're putting it out there, you know, all your viewers know. And yeah, again, like I said before, it opens yourself up for people to scrutinize it and stuff like that. But it's all good. And I love to hear that you have it sounds like what you've learned from what you've put out there and the goals that you put for yourself, and then you've learned to kind of make sure that you are working toward the right goal. So I think that's great. Um, so okay, so we're almost out of time because I want to be respectful of your time. So just some quick questions. What for you? And you maybe alluded to it a little bit, but what keeps disc golf fun for you? how do you make sure that it's, even though it's your job, even though it's something you love doing, but in the back of your mind, do you think this is what I need to do to make sure that disc golf's still fun?
All right, I'm going to commit to 1 minute answers from here on out. That way you can ask
Okay.
some questions. Um, man, I need a timer actually. If I'm honest, I almost never think about like, let me make sure that this is fun,
Yeah.
because to me, I find like I try to find satisfaction a lot of times, and satisfaction almost always comes from like seeing, um, a seeing results from something that you're doing. Um, and so like if I am making a video and it's doing well, that's great. If I'm learning a new disc and trying to get better, it's great. But I think when disc golf is most fun for me is when I'm actually trying to like learn how to be better. And so working on my form is something I haven't been doing a lot, but ultimately that's like when it's most fun. I think disc golf baseline is just always super fun. I
Hmm.
think the biggest deal for me is keeping my expectations low for like and my expectations meaning like that fixed mindset of like I have to get this. Like if I have to cash at an event, or if I have to win, or if I have to get this many views on a video, that's when stuff becomes less fun. But if I just kind of let it be what it is, I feel like I've set myself up in a way that my life's pretty fun, if I'm honest. There's a lot of work, but it's also like I get a lot of satisfaction from it, so it's pretty fun.
Nice. Okay, real quick, last question. If people only take one thing away from your journey
Hmm.
so far, what should it be?
I think the first thing that comes to mind is that like you're never done, and you always, if you can always keep a headspace of like trying to get better, then you'll win. I try to think about it as better, not best, because best is comparative. Like I'm comparing myself to you, I'm comparing myself to other creators, I'm comparing myself to pros. Like if I'm trying to be the best, but if I'm just trying to be better, I'll probably get way closer to being the best than if I focus on being the best. So trying to always improve and grow. And when I've stagnated and when stuff has gone downhill, and it has always been when I'm like, I need to be making this much money or making this many videos or doing this, instead of like, how can I learn to be better at my craft or at my game? And those are the things that I think are more important.
Yeah, I totally agree. Completely agree. All right. Well, Anthony, again, I appreciate you hopping on here and sharing some of your journey and answering your questions. Where can people, I know most people know, but just in case, where can
Hmm.
people follow your journey on YouTube and other channels?
Yeah, I think mostly YouTube is Bodanza Disc Golf, and then I have a second channel right now called Banana Froth. That might be changing sometime in the near future. And then Instagram at Bodanza Disc Golf, Facebook, YouTube. I think or TikTok. I'm kind of everywhere. But I wanted to ask Bobby,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
this is Disc Golf Answer Man after all, not Disc Golf Asker Man. You might need to change the name of the podcast.
Yeah.
I'm intrigued about kind of your thoughts as someone who's very inside of disc golf, inside of a disc golf company that has been acquired and is undergoing a lot of restructuring, and things have been a little crazy. And what are the brands and what's important? How do you see where disc golf is right now, and what it can be doing best to grow from your perspective? Because I feel like I shared a lot. I'm pretty intrigued. And also, not only like inside of the manufacturing space, but I talked a lot about the business side of things, where I'm just a solo creator who kind of has a business. I'm interested in like what we could be doing as creators to help continue to grow the sport.
That's a great question. So, what do I think about a disco? It's interesting. I've only been away from disc golf or from dynamic discs for 4 years. But what the biggest thing I found was when I heard I was coming back, the idea of coming back to dynamic discs, I started doing research on what's happening on social media. You came up, Jay Milley came up, Silas, Broderick, all these different. And the biggest thing I noticed, the shift was it felt like what was happening outside of disc golf when it came to YouTube content creation, the creator economy, as they call it, where, you know, young people are going to actually not just make YouTube videos just for the fun of it. They're going to actually make this a career. It was cool to see that it was happening in disc golf. So that got me super excited. And then when I got back to, then when I actually started working the dynamic disc, I started realizing that like disc golf was still kind of on its way down from the pandemic. When I left, it was like we were still selling out of discs. We couldn't keep discs in the warehouse. And when I left, I was like, I'm crazy for leaving, because right now it's like crazy. As far as what you guys can do to help, I say I love what you're saying as far as like not chasing the virality, not trying to be the best, but just trying to improve yourself. I say I would say continue to share your journey so that people that want to connect, that enjoy your journey, that can relate to your journey, and then the commonality you have of the love of disc golf, they're going to gravitate to you, right? Not everybody's going to like your style. Not everybody's going to like how you do it, how you tell your story, but I truly believe enough people will enjoy it that you'll be able to do what you want to do within disc golf and within YouTube. That was one of the things when I first started at Dynamic Disc. That's what my goal was. My whole thing was, I'm just going to share our journey. I'm going to show what happens behind the scenes. I just wanted you along for the ride. When someone would come up to me and they'd say, "Oh my gosh, Bobby, I know this sounds weird, but I feel like I know you. I feel like I could go hang out with you at a bar and have a beer and we'd be friends." I think, yeah, that's kind of what I was trying to do. I was just a guy that liked disc golf and loved being on video and loved sharing the story. So I would say we need more people like you that are just sharing their journey, and disc golf happens to be another common string between you and your audience. It is kind of, and it is kind of a thing that I try to teach our players. There is kind of a lot, it feels like, and I don't know if you feel it, maybe I'm in a weird bubble, but it feels like people uh, downplay the importance of social media and content creation as far as what players need to do. Like there's this whole battle. They need to concentrate on being a pro player, which I totally get, but they also need to, the state that disc golf is in right now, they need to also realize the importance of using media to help them accomplish their disc golf goals. So, but I don't know, is that something you kind of feel or you see from what you see out there as far as the player versus being a pro player versus, it feels like Simon's the anomaly, the outlier. He's a great disc golfer, but he's also a great content creator.
Yeah, I definitely see that. I think that makes sense with an understanding of like what disc golf could be. And I think that's similar to, um, so I feel like from a pro player's perspective, which I don't have because I'm content creator by far first, and that was pretty intentional. When I learned about disc golf and like wanted to make stuff, I was like, oh, maybe I can go pro. Like, cause like this is a sport that's like easier to go pro in than a lot of other sports. Cause I got started when I was 24, and it's like it's potentially there and possible. But I was always
Hmm.
like, let me make sure that the money's good first because I know like the contracts might not be there forever. Let me make sure that like am providing enough value that I can do this for the long term because it's a short-term game if you're relying only on like other people or other companies. And similar to what I was talking about with where your question about the floor, where my opinion is just that the floor is there if you let it be, but you need to let it be instead of looking backwards. I think it's a little bit of a backwards view. And I say this at being friends with a lot of pros. I think it's a bit of a backwards view to think that you don't have to promote yourself because companies are so spread thin and there's not a lot of money around in disc golf that you can stand out by figuring out like who you're talking to on social media and garnering a following because it seems to me, and I don't know this to be the case because I'm not in these back end conversations at all, but it seems to me like there's a reliance on manufacturers and sponsorships from pros in order to continue subsisting in disc golf. And that's a little dissonant with where the market is in disc golf right now, with the ability of manufacturers and other sponsoring agencies and entities to pay players. I feel like there's not enough money in disc golf right now for the value that is being created by players for the manufacturers and other companies. And I think it's looking backwards a little bit to be like, well, this is what it was, so I should get this contract. And it's not quite looking at the current state of things, which I think there's an opportunity there for the pros who do realize like what the current state of things is and how do you provide value to a manufacturing company as well as to your audience or your fan base. That's what it's called when you're a pro athlete, not an audience. To your fan base.
Right.
Um, because frankly, there's just not like there's a lot of people on tour and there's not enough for everyone to make like a full-time living just based off of the what it seems to be the manufacturer's pockets right now. with how
Yeah.
much they need to pay for their big stuff. And so that's where I do agree with you. But I also think I think right now we're kind of in the dip of that. There's a really super tiny book called The Dip by Seth Godin. It's like 70
Mm.
pages. I read that in the middle of the year, like when I was like my most depressed, having the most like crazy time, and it made me understand. It made me really feel good about like, yeah, this is kind of where I'm at. And it really sucks, but also there's like a way out. And a part of that is just like I feel like we're in that dip right now for the expectations of players and the expectations of manufacturers. It feels like they're further apart than they've been in a long time. And a part of that might be the transparency of like the manufacturers not wanting to be like, oh, we're super down. We got no money. And like that could, and like they don't want to tell their players that because like there's not a lot of closed mouths in disc golf. Like people will talk. And so you
Yeah.
don't want to be like, oh, dude, we got no money to pay anybody. But at the same time, it seems like that's the reality for a lot of companies, but there's still the expectation of players that they can get full salaries and not just like deals that are based on sales. And it seems to me that like it is important to like work really hard at your craft to go pro. But the question to me becomes like, what benefit is there of being like top 25 in the world versus top 8 in the world is a very different place. But the player who's 25 to wherever I am at 350th, like probably further down, but wherever that is, like being able to create something valuable to a manufacturer or a company, it is going to take away from their professional ambitions in the short term. But I think a long term view is that they might not have a great 1, 2, 3 seasons, but if they're providing enough value to the people who are paying them and to creating value in other ways, I think that their longevity in the sport will be longer. And so I mean, it's a hard thing to balance.
Yeah.
It's hard to get in those shoes because you do understand, like, you want to practice and get to be the best that you can. But if you can get to be the best that you can with a 1 year runway versus a 5 year runway, it might take you until year 4 to get as good as you could have been in year 1. And I'm hoping that that's the case for me because I'm like on to year 4. You're coming here soon, so I'm hoping that gets to be the case. But like, it might take way longer, but your runway and your ability to do it will be so much more sustainable. But I
Yeah.
mean, there's so many things that are like they're not easy problems, and I think it's easy to talk about them as if they're easy problems, and they're just not.
Yeah, it's definitely the thing is when I talk to people, it's like I get it. It's tough. It's tough trying to be a top pro player and tough being your own marketing person.
Mhm.
You know, brands are stretched thin. They can only concentrate on so many players, and the top players are the ones they're going to promote, right? I mean, that just makes sense. But to also answer your question on the business side, yeah, I mean, business is good. Is it fantastic? No, it's not fantastic.
Mhm.
It's not fantastic like it was, but it's still good. Are there days that we meet our goals? Yes. Are there days that we fall short? Yes. But overall, business is good. I wouldn't be here if I didn't feel that way, right?
Yeah.
I wasn't forced to come back, right? I took a hard look at it, talked to a bunch of people in the industry within dynamic discs, on the outside of dynamic discs, because I wanted to get a sense of like, am I just jumping onto a sinking ship?
Yeah.
And I'm not. And so, you know, without getting into specifics, you know, sure, from the outside, I get it. Things don't look good. But what breaks my heart is the misconceptions, the perception that people have for not just dynamic discs, but of the entire house of discs and all the different brands. I mean, I get what's happening. People feel like we're bleeding together, but we're not. We're not bleeding together. We're still trying to maintain the brand identity separate from each other. But it broke my heart the other day. There was a particular podcast that had put out about something that wasn't looking good for disc golf, and they kind of concentrated on House of Discs. And someone made a comment on the video and said, if House of Discs wants to survive, they just need to let dynamic discs fail and go away. Anthony, that broke my heart, dude. Like, I was talking to my wife and I was almost in tears because I was part of this brand when it was just a handful of employees and helped build it to what it is now, right? And so, and it just, the part that breaks my heart is people don't understand that there's still a handful of people here that love doing what they do. They love the sport of disc golf. Now, some people are here because they want a paycheck. Of course, that's we need those people, but the majority of people love the sport of disc golf, and they love the brands that they work for, and they're doing every day trying to make the right decisions so it succeeds, and yet people are out there just, with their pitchforks. So that part kinda gets to me, but every day I wake up and I think, "I still love this brand. I still love playing disc golf. I love the sport of disc golf, and I love what disc golf has done for me, so I wanna continue to give back to it."
Yeah.
Um, but as a business, we're doing good. Business is good, and I'm excited for
Yeah.
2026. We have a lot going on for 2026, and I'm excited about it.
Yeah, I think the perception, and you can definitely correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think the perception comes from most people will gauge how a company is doing based off of the contracts that they're able to give to professional players.
Yes.
And that is not a reliable way of seeing how a company is doing. And what I said earlier about like companies not having, like, we don't have any money, that was specifically in terms of like some companies might actually be failing. I don't know, but so, like, I think a lot of companies are taking a much harder look at what is actually bringing us and creating like profits and revenues for us, not just what have we done. And I think that in one sense is something that I very much advocate. I think it's going to be a hard contraction in the professional sponsorship space, but not necessarily a contraction in the company's profitability overall.
Yeah.
Because just like you said, that Seth had said before, like disc golf as a whole, like I think in terms of disc golf is continuing to grow. The sport is continuing to grow. The professional space, like that's where there is that difference and that disparity. And the disc sales might be down because people like the sport might be continuing to grow, but they might be less purchasers. Like there's a ton of there's a confluence of factors that affects it
Mhm.
all. But I think people, the bottom line is I think people, because this is basically the only way that they've been able to judge perception, because these are all private companies, they judge the perception based off of their favorite pros and how much money they're able to get from the companies. And it seems like companies used to attribute, or maybe not even attribute, they would just throw money at players because they had growth, not necessarily because the players themselves were the ones creating that growth or value. And now it seems like companies are trying to do a slightly more business prudent move of what is actually creating that value and how do we put money towards it while still servicing some sort of sponsorship marketing from like players. But I just think that that's where the disparity between manufacturers and players comes. The businesses aren't as good as they were during COVID, which means that they're not, like, the surplus isn't going towards players. And it seems like there was surplus money going towards players, not necessarily money that was created by like the professional player assets that a company had under their like marketing arm was is
Yeah.
kind of my thought as to where things are, which I think perception wise is going to hurt companies a little bit. But I
Yeah.
also know that the perception hurt might not be felt compared to the profitability hurt because they're selling discs to people not through their players, which is why they're dropping their players kind of idea. So
Yeah.
I think there's a smart way to do it where it makes sense. But I'm really, yeah, I don't know what it's going to look like, but I agree with you that thinking about the long term deal and figuring out how do I market myself a little
Yeah.
bit. And I think in a sense it stinks. Like in an ideal world, I think companies are doing the marketing for their players, like other bigger companies in other sports where they have marketing arms that are doing that. But I just don't think that's quite the world that we live in because like you're the brand manager, marketing director at Dynamic. You don't have a massive team to be working. Like if there needs to be 1 to 3 dedicated people per disc golf manufacturer team who are able to actually promote the players that way. And it's just not the reality. In an ideal world, it is. And maybe eventually we get to that point and the players can just be players. But it's a small enough sport right now that I think the players, unless they're at the very tippy top or super marketable in some way, you have to do a little bit of it yourself to give yourself the runway time to really become the best. But that's coming from me, who is not that great at disc golf. So they could take it or leave it.
Yeah, it's weird because there's a lot of days where I think, man, this is reminiscent of when I first started, where I'm the only content creator, right? I'm the
Hmm.
only one going out there. Now, Eric helps me, and he does stuff, but it's like I'm the only one directing this. And then at one point it was me, Anthony, Danny, and we had another girl that was helping us part time. And so my goal is to get back to that where I have a team working and promoting and marketing and sharing the journey of dynamic disc. So, but we'll get there. It's
Yep.
all good. So, all right, Anthony. Well, again, I appreciate you hopping on. I loved learning a little bit more about your journey, and I hope that maybe in the middle of the year, check back in with you, see how you're doing, see how you're hitting your goals, and what's going on for your YouTube channel. So, I appreciate it.
That'd be sweet. Thank you so much for having me on.